All right, you wild cats. Day 2 of Chapter 7, Lesson 1, the Biosphere, is on page 266, and it is populations. Okay, so on your notes, populations. You can learn a lot by studying an individual plant, animal, or other organism. Okay, learn from individual. There's that word. But to understand how an ecosystem functions, you need to study populations. So, quotes ecosystem, arrow populations. In order to understand an ecosystem, you have to study populations. A population consists of all the members of the same type of organism that live in an ecosystem. So, all members, same type organism. The Mojave Desert ecosystem includes populations of, guess what we're going to do? Mojave Desert, indent, and write them all. Joshua trees, write it. California junipers, CA junipers. Rattlesnakes, bighorn sheep, jackrabbits, and many other species, etc., etc., period. The birth or death of one plant or animal is not likely to change the Mojave Desert very much. One plant/animal equals little effect. But what if a disease killed all the Joshua trees? Disease, ? Or a new animal species began to live where the jackrabbits now live? New species, ? Events like these can affect the entire community. Desert ecosystems are fragile. Deserts equal fragile. Suppose humans cut down large numbers of desert plants. How would the animals that depend on them survive? What if it rained even less? Desert organisms can live with limited water, but even they need some. Indent, limited water. That's why the deserts are fragile. In every ecosystem, some species are very important for the whole community. Some species, very important. In an ocean ecosystem, which fish would you guess are most important? Arguably, the answer is the smallest fish, including herring and mackerel. These fish are food for bigger fish, which in turn are food for sharks, killer whales, and other big animals. Without large numbers of small fish, many other animals would starve. So, E period G period, for example given, small, quote-unquote, feeder fish. If you've ever had an aquarium where you've had pet fish, some of the bigger ones require feeder fish, where you have to buy a goldfish and feed them to the big fish. Those are called feeder fish. All right, let's look at the picture. Feeding relationships. Small fish eat algae and other plant life, and they are food for larger fish. Feeding relationships like these are part of all ecosystems. Wait a minute. They said that the small fish were important because those are fish all the way up the chain of the food web. So what do the small fish eat? Algae and other plants? Hey, let's add that. Arrow, algae, zoop, arrow, plants. Maybe the algae and the plants are actually the most important species in an ocean ecosystem. Because without the algae and the plants, there would be no small fish, and then the bigger fish would have nothing left to eat. Okay. Main idea. What are some of the populations in the Mojave Desert? Some of the populations of the Mojave Desert are Joshua trees, California junipers, rattlesnakes, bighorn sheep, jackrabbits, and others. Some of these populations are plants, some of these populations are animals, and some are other organisms. They didn't list them here, but there could be like moss or bacteria, other small things that we don't normally think of. Maybe even mushrooms, funguses, fungi. Okay, get out your yellow highlighter and your red pen. Let's do the visual summary. Ecosystems are made up of all the biotic and abiotic factors that interact in a given place. Read that with me. Ecosystems are made up of all the biotic and abiotic factors that interact in a given place. Okay, so ecosystem, biotic, abiotic, and interact. Remember here we said interacting next to ecosystem, and also down here, interact. A community is made up of different populations of living things in an ecosystem. Okay, community, living, community, living, community, plants, animals, organisms. A population consists of all the members of the same type of organism that live in a community. So, front, population, all members, same organism. On the back, population, all members, same type organism. Okay, so let's look at the highlighting on the front. We have ecosystem, community, living organisms, environment. And then I went ahead and said, you know what? All of this is about the biosphere. Let's highlight that. All of the things at or near Earth's surface are the biosphere. Okay, the abiotic is the non-living. The biosphere is this entire lesson. The biotic are the living. The community is also all the living. But when we say community, we're really talking about populations together. Those are all the members of the same organism. And then ecosystems, all the things interacting. In this section, ecosystems and communities, the ecosystem is all the living and non-living things that interact with each other. We are worried about the biotic and abiotic factors. And we're worried about communities, all the plants and animals and organisms, all those populations together. Then, of course, break it down even further to each individual population, or each type of plant, or each type of animal or organism. And those are all the members of the same type of organism. Okay, now, your red pen for annotating. Obviously, ecosystem is super important, because the biosphere is where all the ecosystems are. Community, that's all the plants and animals and organisms. Community, all the plants and animals and organisms. Okay, and then this whole lesson's about biosphere, so we're putting an annotation next to that. Okay, there's biosphere again. Here's ecosystem again. Here's where we define the ecosystem, and it's very important that we talk about the interaction between the living and non-living things. All of the living things are the biotic. All the non-living things are the abiotic. All those biotic factors make up a community. That's all the plants and animals and organisms. And then within the community, we have different populations, or members of the same type of organism. Populations of trees, populations of snakes, populations of sheep, and so on. Okay, now obviously you're going to go do your phase 3 connecting. Right? I know something in my brain that connects to what I wrote. I know something in my brain, and it connects to what I'm learning. I predict, maybe I can make a prediction about what we're going to learn next, or about how these things affect the earth and affect humans. Or I wonder, maybe this makes me wonder about something that I don't already know yet. I wonder about something that we didn't write down. When you go to do your summary, obviously, you're going to copy the main idea straight from the book or your notes. And if you don't know what page it's on, guess what? It's at the top of your notes. An ecosystem is a community of living organisms and their environment. Okay, do you hear that? You hear ecosystem. You hear community. We talked about the plants, animals, and organisms. You hear living. That's the biotics. You hear environment. That's the abiotic, non-living stuff. All of Earth's ecosystems are found in a narrow zone at or near Earth's surface, called the biosphere. Okay, then to continue on writing sentences, you might say something like, let's see, we just talked about ecosystems, so let's start with there. An ecosystem is all of the living and non-living things that interact with each other in an area. Okay, there's a whole sentence right there. All the living things are the biotic factors. All of the non-living things in an ecosystem are the abiotic factors. And examples include sunlight, soil, water, and air. Those living things make up communities, including plants, animals, and other organisms. Within those communities, there are populations of similar organisms. For example, certain types of trees or animals. You could say certain types of plants or animals. All right, so it's kind of like this hierarchy working its way down. You have ecosystems. That's the living and non-living that interact. The living's the biotic, the non-living's the abiotic. All that living biotic stuff makes up communities of everything, plants, animals, and organisms. And then within those communities, you have certain types of plants, certain types of animals, certain types of other organisms, making up a population for each type of organism. All right, good job persevering with the growth mindset. Roar, Wildcats. Go work on your phase 3 connecting, something in your brain that connects to what we learned, and your phase 4 summary. Good luck and roar, Wildcats!